Catherine and welcome to my channel. This is the first video of a three-part series where I will be sharing with you how I tackled my first marathon that I ran just last week in Amsterdam and how I actually managed to qualify for both Chicago and Boston during my first attempt. The main goal of the series is really just to show that it is possible even if you are a complete amateur and even if you started running like me just this year. And I just want to be kind of a motivation for everyone who is wanting to maybe qualify for Boston or just finish their first marathon, and just show you that really it is doable. You just have to have a little bit of luck and a lot of perseverance and, be very goal oriented. So in this first video of this series, I will be tackling the three kind of, in my opinion, very important parts about racing the marathon. In the second part, I will be talking about my training plan, which is probably the most important part, so I'm going to dedicate like the full video to it. And then in my last video of this series, I will be just talking in general about the Amsterdam Marathon experience, if I would recommend it for first timers, whether it is suited for beginners, what did I think about the atmosphere, the race, the weather in Netherlands, and all of that good stuff. But let's go into the subject of today's video, which is going to be about the race itself. So I'm going to be talking first about kind of what was my strategy, what were my initial goals, how did I wanted to split the race in terms of my paces. Then I will touch briefly about nutrition, so how I actually fueled my marathon, because I think that is extremely important. And also everything about carb loading, my pre-run nutrition, and also kind of my recovery nutrition. And lastly, though, it's not the most important thing about racing a marathon, I will also speak about gear. So what shoes did I wear? What kind of outfit did I ended up wearing? Did I think it was a good choice or not? And all of that. So let's get into the first part. So I named this first part pacing strategy because I think that, every good marathon result started with a good strategy, whether it is in terms of nutrition or pace or overall training. For me, when I initially signed up for the marathon, and it was very shortly after I ran my first half marathon, and I was, very motivated, but at the same time, I didn't actually have any idea what it is to run a distance longer than 21 kilometers. So I was very conservative in setting my goals. And even when I signed up for my half marathon, my kind of goal was to go under 2 hours. That went very well. I managed to do it under that time in like 1 hour and 48 minutes. So here I said, okay, under 4 hours, that seems realistic. That seems actually easily achievable even with my current fitness. And so I put that as my initial goal. Of course, as the training progresses, it's very important to kind of reevaluate your goals. Maybe you have set up a goal that is too ambitious, and during the training, you just see that I will be never able to, maintain that pace. So it's good to revise it and, maybe have 2 or 3 goals for the race that can be, pace oriented, but also, I just want to have fun during the marathon. That can be also a very, valid goal to have. So as I said, my initial goal was to go under 4 hours, but during the training, I have become more confident, and when I was doing a lot of the tempo runs and kind of like rehearsing the actual marathon pace, I realized I can go much faster because I essentially went from training 3 times a week to 6 times per week. I really upped my volume, which allowed me to train a lot more, build my aerobic base and also work on my speed, which allowed me to get to paces that would get me under the 3:30 mark. And I think that the 3:30 finishing time in marathon is kind of like a magic number, and it all started with it being the qualifying time for Boston. And I don't want to say that I'm like everyone else, I got influenced by this, but it's true, like you hear it there, you hear it from like all sides. Everyone is talking just about that BQ time that they want to achieve. And so it definitely got into my head. And when I was standing at the starting line of the marathon, I was thinking to myself, I will be very happy if I finish under 4 hours. But, in the depth of my heart, I was really hoping that I will finish under the 3 hours and 30, which I did at the end, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. So because I had this more ambitious goal, I said to myself that I'm going to start off with a pace that will allow me to actually finish in this set time, and that in case it doesn't go well, I just don't feel that this is the right pace for me, I will just shift to like a more conservative strategy. In terms of my splits, and if you don't know what splits are, it's basically what kind of tempo you have per each kilometer or mile during the run. Most people or coaches recommend you do negative splits. That means that you start pretty conservatively, you start a couple of seconds slower than is your actual goal pace, and then towards the end you actually catch up and you become quicker. The reason for this should be to conserve the energy in the beginning where you have a lot of energy, so that you can pull out from those stores towards the end when it's going to become very hard. This was my initial goal as well, but let's say it didn't go exactly how I hoped for. So I will now put on screen what were actually my splits that I can see in the official app of the race. And as you can see, I started off a little bit faster than I should have, because initially I was thinking that I'm going to start at like 5 minutes per kilometer, and that slowly I'm going to work my way to like 4:50, which would put me under the 3:30 mark. I started at around 4:56, so I already started 4:52, so I already started a little bit quicker than I anticipated, and then towards the end of the race I slowed down to actually 4:56. So I was doing the complete opposite of what I wanted to do, but this was my first marathon and I really didn't know what to expect. So for me it was very hard to actually know, like, starting out, whether this is too fast or this is too slow, or whether this is just right. My main kind of indicator of what kind of pace I want to maintain during the race was actually my heart rate monitor, because I used to run like during the whole training cycle with a heart rate monitor. I think that it is a really good way how to manage perceived exertion and just make sure that you are not overtraining yourself. So I was trying to kind of hit the threshold heart rate that I set using the 40 minutes test. If you have ever done that, you basically run for 40 minutes at like the highest pace, highest speed that you are able to sustain, and then kind of the average heart rate is your threshold. It's a shorter variation of the 60 minutes test that is a little bit more like mentally draining. I can put down in the notes kind of a link on how to perform this, because I probably screwed it up when I explained it to you. So that's kind of the pacing or like the strategy that I was trying to follow. As you can see, sometimes those plans don't go as you hoped, but still I think the difference of 4 seconds, it's still pretty consistent in terms of pace, so I am pretty happy with it. But for my next attempt in a marathon, I definitely want to be more intentional about actually doing those negative splits, and in the beginning actually being a little bit more conservative. Now for the race itself and how it actually felt. So in the beginning, most people say that the first half of the marathon, so the half marathon, should be pretty easy, and I can 100% agree with that. So it was pretty easy for me. I felt like I'm fast, I felt like I'm strong, I really felt like I have prepared myself well enough to be able to tackle the distance. The only thing that was unfortunate was the weather, which I will talk about in the third part of the series, but the weather in Amsterdam was so unpredictable that weekend, that we had hail, we had rain, we had sun. So I think that was a factor that was kind of influencing how I felt during the whole race, because when we started, it was actually sunny, even though just a couple moments before that I got soaking wet due to the hail that started falling. But that I think influenced that the beginning of the race felt very easy for me, because the weather was nice, it was quite warm, so I didn't feel cold. But then at around, I think, the 10-kilometer mark, it started to rain again. And then towards like the 25th kilometer, it started to hail again, actually. So it was kind of ups and downs. And, actually after the 21-kilometer mark, so after the half marathon distance, it really started, to kind of weigh on me, especially with the addition of the bad weather, that I really just want this to finish and to end. So definitely when I was getting towards the 30-kilometer, I was already in my mind thinking, I want this to end. I want to be somewhere warm, somewhere dry. And that was a huge motivation to actually finishing the race. But most people say that the actual race starts towards the last 10 to 15 kilometers, and I, again, 100% agree. I think that the 30 to 35 kilometer was still pretty achievable or like manageable, because until that point, my longest distance was actually 32 kilometers. So I could still visualize in my mind what it's going to feel like to run 35 kilometers. But past that point, it was like a big unknown, you know, I was going into an unknown territory, and it was interesting, you know. It's a point where you actually start to feel your legs, because up until that point, I think it's more mental, you know, just not to get too bored. But during the last 10 kilometers or like 12 kilometers, it starts really to weigh on you. Like, I felt like my legs have started to become heavier, and it has started to be more difficult. I don't feel like my kind of cardiovascular fitness was weak, because I didn't feel shortness of breath or anything like that. I really think it was just my legs that were tired by that point. But what really helped during those stages was just to take in more nutrition. So that is something I'm going to talk about in the next part, but I think that being even more proactive about nutrition and actually upping up my carbs per hour is going to help in my future races to avoid this heavy legs feeling that early on, and, you know, maybe push it just towards the last 5 kilometers. And you know, the last 5 kilometers of the race, you know, I think that is more mental than anything, because you really kind of see the finish line in front of you. You're already mentally, you know, seeing the medal on your neck. But yeah, those were hard, and I felt like I'm slowing down. So I was like having to concentrate really on actually speeding up and, you know, going faster and trying to maintain my pace. And I actually managed to sprint the last 500 meters. So that felt incredibly good. That felt incredibly strong. And when I crossed the finish line, you know, like it felt amazing. And when I saw the time, when I crossed the finish line, I just had the indication on my watch of what the time is. But I didn't know it until I got it engraved on my medal. And, you know, that moment was priceless. Like, when I saw the number, I just like teared up, and it was really wonderful. So that was kind of the race itself, how it felt. And now let's move into the second part of this video, which is nutrition. So nutrition is incredibly important, and I think that it's thanks to nutrition that we have been able to get so much faster in marathon in the last couple of years. Because, you know, when the marathon discipline, you know, started, people didn't know actually about how big the impact of nutrition is on running. And I think that today, with the knowledge, with all of the science that's behind it, people realize that nutrition is a huge component of how to actually push towards those faster paces. And people think that it starts, you know, during the race. Actually, you start a race and, you know, that's when nutrition is important. But nutrition is important also leading up to the race. So I would like to first talk a little bit about carb loading and whether I actually did it. So because I was racing in Amsterdam, that meant that I had to travel to there, because I don't live in Amsterdam, I live in Prague. And so I actually arrived to Amsterdam on Friday during the race week. That means that most of my carb loading would have been done during my traveling. And as you can imagine, that is a little bit tough, because you don't actually know what you're going to be eating exactly, because you are going to restaurants. And of course you can do like the choices like eat potatoes, eat rice, blah, blah, blah. But you just cannot go into a restaurant and say, hey, I just want 1 kilo of cooked rice or something. That would just look weird. So definitely it wasn't the kind of perfect carb load, but I already started my carb load on Monday, like the week of the race, where I upped my carbs by a small amount, but, you know, still a little bit, so that my glycogen stores actually start to fill up. That's the main reason why you want to carb load. You just want to have the biggest glycogen stores possible, because those can usually propel you during the race for about 90 minutes of effort. That's why during like the training cycles, you also take in nutrition only for the like in race nutrition only for the longer runs, because that's when you actually run out of glycogen, and then you know you would be pulling from like your protein and fat stores in your body, and you don't want that. Most importantly, you don't want to be pulling energy out of your muscles. I started carb loading on the Monday before the race, and then I was supposed to kind of up those carbs again on the first day. So I did that, but then on Friday and Saturday, I really just tried to choose those higher carb options when we went to a restaurant, but I wasn't too stressed about it because it can help to a certain point to carb load, but definitely it's not going to make or break your race. I think that the meal that is the most important is actually the dinner before the race. You don't want it to be too heavy, so you don't want it to be very fatty, but you also don't want it to contain a lot of fiber. So what I actually went for was a loaf of bread. It was a cornbread, so it wasn't whole wheat, therefore it didn't have a lot of fiber. And I combined that with grapes and also some hummus. So I did get a little bit of protein and a little bit of fat from the hummus, but most of the meal was actually carbs. Then the actual day of the marathon, like what I would really recommend you to wake up a couple of hours early, even if you want to fall asleep again, after your breakfast. But if you manage to eat a breakfast around like 2 hours or 2.5 hours before the start, I think that you're going to feel much better. But this also depends, on you as an individual. And I would always go for something that you have practiced during your long runs. So what I usually ate before my long runs, I tried to replicate before my marathon, and that was to eat an oatmeal. And the best solution for the cases when you are in a hotel, I think it's instant oatmeal. So I just had like 2 packets of instant oatmeal. It was a chocolate one, and it was actually sweetened with dates. So I felt that was a very good choice, because those are the carbs that will actually sustain you for longer, but also they are not going to completely weigh you down. So that's why oats are great. And I also combined that with a banana. So all in all, I think I had around 500 calories and around 100 grams of carbs to kind of start my day. Then when we moved to the arena where the race actually started, around 15 minutes prior to start of the race, I had another banana. And this was just to give me the energy for like after the first 15 minutes of the race, like before I actually taken my first gel. A lot of people opt to take a gel at this point, but personally, knowing that I will be eating around like 6 gels during the race, I just wanted to have something solid to chew on, because I knew that by the end of the race I will get tired of the gel texture. Now moving into kind of during the race nutrition, I know that this is hard for a lot of people, and you really have to train your gut to be able to ingest a lot of the carbs during the race. And my kind of strategy for this was to take 1 gel every 30 minutes, which would put me around like 60 grams of carbs per hour in terms of my nutrition intake. So the nutrition that I was using was these energy gels from Decathlon. So I had apple ones and raspberry ones. And why I chosen them is that first, they are cheap. You are going to go through a lot of them during your training. B, they never made me sick. And C, you can easily ingest them even without, slurping on water. Which sometimes, especially if you don't have water on you and the next kind of fueling station is a couple kilometers away, it's a very good and important thing to know about your gel. Also, I forgot one thing. The morning of the race, I also took in 1 electrolyte tablet. So this is actually something where I broke my rules, and I got this during the running expo. But it's just an electrolyte drink. I think this is orange flavor. It's not very good, but it did the job. You just want to stay very well hydrated. And besides the gel, what I took with me on the race was a water bottle. So I have a little kind of a foldable, squeezable water bottle from Decathlon as well, of a volume of 500 milliliters. And that was just the good amount of water that enabled me to sip throughout the race every time when I had the gel. And I also managed to get a little bit of water from the water kind of refreshment stations along the race. The thing with those is you get it in the cups. It's so difficult to drink from the cups, and I managed to spill the water all over me like twice during the race. And so in terms of the gels, I think that all in all I ate like 6 of those during the race. When I arrived at the finish line, what was supplied by the like immediately was a banana and also another hydrolyte drinks, but honestly, I just didn't want that fake sugar taste at all, so I was drinking only water and I had that banana. And then when I met up with my mother, once I got my medal engraved and all of that, I actually ate or drank a banana milk. It was a soy milk, so it had a good combination of protein and carb just to kind of give me a little bit of start on recovery before I get to my actual meal, because if you have ever done a race like this, you are usually not too hungry, and also it takes a while before you get into your hotel or into the restaurant or all of that. So it's always good to have something small on hand just to kind of kickstart the recovery. And that is everything for my nutrition. So let's now move to the gear. So gear, I would say that for gear, the same recommendation as for nutrition applies. You don't want to test out anything new on your race day that you haven't tested before. And here again, I kind of went against this rule and I did some last minute changes. Initially, I have planned to wear leggings and a sports bra and a little bit of like a very light jacket on. But a couple of weeks before my actual race, I think like 2 weeks, when I did my last kind of longer run of like 20 kilometers, what I have noticed is that the bra completely chafed me. And that meant that I said to myself that I cannot do that for 42 kilometers, that I would just like die. And so when we arrived to Amsterdam, my main ambition was to go to Lululemon and, get some leggings and get some top and, just go and enjoy the race and then. And what ended up happening actually was that I kind of combined some stuff that I already have with some of the new stuff from Lululemon. So I ended up wearing Nike shorts that had a lot of pockets, which was very beneficial for storing all of those gels. And I would highly recommend you to get either leggings or shorts with that. Then in terms of my top, I wore kind of a long sleeve top from Lululemon that had nice thumb holes. I will insert a picture here of my whole outfit so you can see. It was very comfortable, it was very sweat wicking, and it was especially great because when it was raining, it was very cold, but after it stopped raining, I felt immediately how I'm getting drier. So definitely it's made out of great material and I would highly recommend that top. Then I was also wearing some, then I was also wearing some leg sleeves. So these were compression socks from Compress Sport. I have tested out these during my training when I actually got shin splints. And those really help to just kind of strengthen that whole area. In terms of my shoes, I was wearing my Nike's Vaporflies, so this kind of coral version. These are the Vaporflies Freeze, and I have bought this because they felt to me the most comfortable out of all of the carbon shoes when I tested them out in store. And I must say I was very happy with them, especially because I got soaking wet before the race, as I mentioned earlier, and because these are made out of that kind of mesh material, like there is no water that will actually get trapped in them. And so you don't have a feeling that your legs have like 10 kilos of water on them. So that was really good. Now, in terms of the accessories that I was just wearing a headband just to get my AirPods to stick in my ears because they always fall out. And yeah, then I was wearing my AirPods, and that was just to play some music because I hate running without music. And of course my heart rate monitor, which I use the Polar Chest Strap, which is, in my opinion, the most reliable one, and it connects to my Apple Watch, which is actually my last piece of accessories that was transmitting the heart rate into my watch. And so that is all of my gear, and that also concludes the last part of this video and the first video of the series. So I hope this was helpful for you. If so, please comment down below what was your experience during the marathon. Like, would you add anything, or would you recommend anything for me to try during my next one? And I will see you in the next video where I will be talking about the training plan. So thanks a lot for watching, and see you